weird situation. 10 years ago, I was asked to do some TV, and I was sort of into it. I was like, you know, can I do it with, no rules, and swear and say fuck and cunt, whatever, and ask whatever questions and just be me. And they were like, oh no, there's going to be, strict rules. And I was like, well, fuck it. I'm not going to do it. I don't give a fuck. It's not like I want to be a fucking TV person or whatever, Anyway, so at the time I was hanging out with some dudes. A friend of mine that I was living with, Lance, was doing film and, was getting into it and stuff. And we decided to shoot this fucking pilot for a TV show. It took like 6 months, probably longer maybe, 6 months. And yeah, so we've just been sitting in a box. It didn't go anywhere. We didn't do anything. We just got high and we just shot it and just didn't do anything about it. So I thought, fuck it, you know what? I'll get them edited. This one, the one I'm about to show you, it's an Angry Anderson interview. It was I think it was the first one we did. It's probably the tamest one we did. The rest are pretty, I don't write questions down. I spat them out the way I felt at the fucking time. I didn't give a shit about writing stuff or scripted shit. It's real TV. It's called Dirty TV for a reason. It's straight up, no bullshit. But yeah, and so we shot these things. There's about 16 interviews over 6 months. If you're interested in watching any of the other ones, just like this one, and I'll put them up. There's Dismember, Electric Wizard. There's heaps of bands, Australian bands as well, and Blood Duster, the Spazzies, stuff, and they're really cool because it's 10 years old and it's pretty funny to look back on it now. But this interview was cool. Angry Anderson's a fucking legend. He's a fucking good dude, and yeah, it was a weird situation that they just really briefly. It was an industry show and it was just invite only. And what it was Angry was playing a show, and his band was the Angels, which was fucking awesome. It was it was awesome, right? And then the Angels played as well, and it had Wilbur Wilde singing, and it was killer. Anyway, this is when they put out the album Pain, Rose Tattoo, and it's an interview pretty much about that and just weird shit and stuff. Hope you like it. Let me know what you think. Like it, I'll put some more up. Let me know. Cheers, man. Alright, this is The Wog and Dirty TV. I'm here with fucking...
The Wog! Anyway, what are we doing?
An interview. Alright, we're here with Angry Anderson, the rock legend of bloody Rose Tattoo, the Tats. New album, Pain.
Yes.
Fun album to make?
No album is a fun album to make. It's actually, you'd be mistaken, rightfully so, if you thought that Pain was actually a working title.
Yep.
I don't think that I've always likened doing albums. Pete has always likened them to sort of like having teeth pulled, but it's kind of like, in a very esoteric sense, in a very deep and meaningful sense, it's kind of like giving birth. Not that I'd ever want to or have ever experienced that, having been a bloke most of my life. Yeah. But an album for a band that's forte, which is a Latin word for what you're really best at.
Yeah.
Is it's laborious.
Yeah.
There's a lot of time consumed by writing songs. That's my wagger. Do you want to get that alarm, please? Just push stop. The little red telephone. There you go. Push it a few times quickly. Yeah, otherwise, a little snooze will come back on.
That's right.
Yeah. So it took about as long as any album we've ever, from starting to record to finishing. 4 to 6 weeks.
So with rock today, you've been around. Do you think that the
what
rock...
do you mean by that?
Yeah, you're only like 26, so... But I'm getting at, do you think rock's got the same attitude as what it did then, or has rock still got attitude?
I think rock and roll has. I'm not too sure about what is laughably passed off these days as the rock industry or rock and roll per se. I think every now and again, rock bands come along, regardless of how hard that other people or other influences within the industry try to sort of stamp out there'll always be some bands that come along that have what I call, or really recognise or associate myself with, is the sort of like the true rock and roll spirit.
Yeah.
You know, and they're always disrespectful. They're always irreverent. Yeah. They're always very, very healthily rebellious in the true sense. I think there's enough real good rock and roll spirit, and I think one of the last places in the world that it actually lives and breathes as an uncontrollable animal is here in Australia. I think
for sure.
I think England, to its credit to this day, still breeds real animal mentality, if you like. Not that I suppose animal and mentality don't actually go together, but instinctive sort of aggressive approach.
Yeah.
You know, rock and roll is one of those things that you can, like I said, you can dress the tart up in a different dress, you know, like every few years and just represent it. You know what I mean? So it's the enduring thing. It's the attitude. You're right.
Yeah. So you've done a few shows. What's the weirdest show you've done?
One that springs to mind was that in the early days, Breaking Europe was a very, very interesting prospect.
Yeah.
They were talking about the early '80s. And Europe is obsessed with cabaret. I'm going to try and do a very brief explanation.
Yeah.
And to get your mass appeal or get you across to mass audiences, like a lot of really radical kids in Europe, particularly Germany and France and places in Spain, Italy. In case you're one of those wogs. They watch really straight TV.
Yeah.
So what the promoters and the record companies try to get, you know, the weirdest of bands, you know, like Twisted Sister and like Kiss and all these other fucking great bands, all did these shows. So they're really straight.
Yeah.
So they picked this one in Germany for us to do, and it was called Cafe.
Yeah.
And what it is a whole lot of people, and they sit at tables, and they're really, really straight, and they don't, you know, they don't want to know about rock and roll.
Yeah.
But it has a massive, like 13 million fucking people every night or every Saturday night or whatever tune in and watch this show.
Yeah.
So they put, I don't know how he ever managed it, but the manager wangled to get us on. So we've gone on there. Like there was like 6 or 8 rehearsals starting from 1 o'clock in the afternoon, so about 6 o'clock at night, and we were all blind, stinking drunk, and they brought in all these really straight people, sat them down, and gave them a plate of food and a glass of beer, and we were the fucking entertainment. You know, there was a lady on before us who stood there dressed as a milkmaid with a fucking goat and yodel, and I don't know why, but she had real milk in the pail. I mean, why would you do that? But anyway, maybe for authenticity. But then we've came on, you know, and you know they don't know we're an Australian rock band, you know? And I couldn't understand why they just sat there. And after every song, no one applauded. So halfway through the set, I thought I'm going to do me Frank Sinatra. So I've grabbed the originally I knocked back the radio mic because I don't like them because they're just they're really really unreliable. But I've grabbed it and I've walked around the tables singing to people. You know, did the whole Frank Sinatra. You know, like you know, bit chicks on the ear and you know, sat on blokes' laps and you know, all stuff like that. Yeah. So it was really really weird because these people, I mean, there were several women in tears. You know, someone died, there was a baby born. No,
Jesus.
No, I'm kidding. But it was like, it was really weird because it was like, we were, you know, we were just really out of place. But we had this huge mass audience. Yeah. And the next day, sure enough, we were front page news.
Awesome. So, do you prefer like doing the festival gigs or the pub, you know, up front, close pub gigs?
There's no preference. Each has its own special thing that it does or that happens there. Yeah. It's like a tight little arsehole room down here, you know, like that's going to be packed, you know, to the dick hole tonight. A lot of very, very hot and sweaty people, all industry people, so they're all going to be, you know, drinking a lot of them are going to be doing chemicals and fucking, they're going to be drinking a lot of alcohol and, you know, a lot of them are going to want to be out doing something they don't normally do. Yeah. So there's going to be a magic created in that room. Yeah. The fact that the band's overbearingly loud, you know, blah, 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 blah. You can't get that at a festival. Yeah. I mean, you can put up the biggest fucking PA in the world and you can get it unbearably loud, but it's still outside. Yeah. So you don't actually get your head ripped off. Yeah. But there's a special magic that happens at a festival with the grandeur, if you like, the proportion, the size. Yeah. Like we've done festivals where we walked out on stage and it's like There'd be 12 stages at the festival over 3 days, and there's 78 bands, and you go out and there's 30,000 people standing right there in front of you.
Yeah.
And that's a very fucking special thing, particularly if they're interested. It's also very interesting if they're not.
So what do you do in that sitch?
Me, I grew up in Pascoe Vale, so I resort to abuse.
So as a kid growing up, what did you listen to?
Well, fortunately, I grew up in an era where the second coming of the great music, apart from the late 40s, early 50s, when, all the great singers were, like the Eddie Cochrans and the Gene Vincents and the early Elvis, Little Richards, Jerry Lee Lewis, all those people. They were, I grew up in, when I say grew up, I usually relate growing up to sort of somewhere between about 9 and 10 years old and about 18.
Yeah.
Did an awful lot of growing up in that period.
Yeah.
So, I stopped listening. I didn't stop listening. I started listening to people like some of the earliest artists that I ever actually listened to were gratefully for me, because my earliest influence was an uncle of mine, and he was a swing drummer. He played a swing band. So I got to listen to some really great, and that was the essence of rock and roll, which is swing.
Yeah.
Syncopation is everything. And but then I started to listen to black artists, Bill Brunsey, big Bill Brunsey, because he's a big fat bloke. But some Lightning Hopkins, Johnny Hooker, who I think is probably the greatest voice in boogie, not rock and roll, but certainly boogie, which is that's sort of such an integral part of real rock and roll.
Yeah.
So those early influences, Bob Dylan, then later on, of course, the English thing, and I think to a great extent, the English thing saved rock and roll from mediocrity.
We all know, Beyond Thunderdome.
What about Fat Pizza?
That's it. That's classic Wogs. All right.
So fucking loser.
So I hear that you're doing something with Nicolas Cage.
No.
Bullshit.
It was a filthy rumour. Nick started that rumour because he wanted some fucking credibility in this country. I would have said yes, probably, if they'd asked me.
Do you think the Tats will be doing another album?
Yes, I think we're in the throes of it now. We're writing for an album, and hopefully, I think we'll probably do it before the middle of this year.
Yeah, recorded in Germany?
Probably not. I think Pete is fighting cancer, and he has to stay here for treatment.
Yeah.
And also, travel, etc., takes a bit out of him.
Yeah.
So we'll hopefully come full circle. We'd as quirky as it sounds, which it means that you can sort of move on and heal from any experience. But we'd, not that it was a bad experience, it was a great experience working with Alberts. We'd actually had a great idea that we'd like to actually recreate the Alberts vibe for the first 3 albums that we did, and go back and work with George and Harry and do an Alberts album. It's kind of like go full circle.
Yeah.
And then if this is our last album, it's kind of it's closure. And see, I've done therapy. I know all those fucking terms.
Back in the day, did you ever play with AC/DC? Of course.
We jammed together. We actually never did. We never actually officially ever did a gig together.
All right. So what's
in fact, the boys, I just wrote something a while ago as someone rang me up and said, can you write a couple of pages of your memories of Bond?
Yeah.
And I said that all the memories that I have are very, very personal.
Yeah.
We were never, as a lot of people think, the greatest of mates. We were probably loved one another for all the right manly reasons. We had a lot in common as singers.
Yep.
Obviously. You'd have to be a fucking brain surgeon to work that out. I remember saying to him once, one of the things I liked about his lyrics was that to me it was really street poetry.
Yeah.
And he said the same of mine. The guys in AC/DC, including Bon, were the only guys. There's probably a handful of guys that we've actually ever let get up on stage, or that I ever let get up on stage with my band and jam.
Cool.
Yeah.
Also, with Scarred for Life, my copy, on the front, it's all you guys. I'll show you.
Just happen to have it with you. Yeah.
Yeah, but what's the deal with that? Is it like, because like a lot of my friends have got that as the front.
Different countries.
Different country?
Yeah, different countries and different releases.
Uh-huh.
Actually, I'll tell you a funny little story about that photo. The staff at head office Rolling Stone, in the year that we were there, that we released this album, we toured there, I don't know, what year is that, 83, 84?
Yeah.
And we were touring, and the staff voted that the greatest photo of a rock and roll band ever taken. And they wanted to make it, the staff wanted to make it the front cover.
Uh-huh.
And the editors, because they're all businessmen, looked at it and went, "You're fucking kidding." You know, American youth aren't ready for that.
Classic.
In 83. And so we didn't make it on the front cover. We could have been the first Australian band to ever make the front cover of Rolling Stone. But the staff thought it was the best cover they'd ever seen. See, I'm not sort of embarrassed or uneasy or about those sort of things, because we've lived long enough. We're nearly 30 years old as a band, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
So you kind of look back on certain things and you think, well, that is true.
Yeah.
It's like when other people, when other people in other countries and other bands have said Rose Tats are probably one of the greatest rock bands that ever played. You see, I wholeheartedly agree.
Yep.
15 years ago, I would have gone, oh, geez, that's a big call, and you do the sort of the typical, or shucks, gee whiz, and look at the ground. So no, fuck it, of course we are.
Yeah, you've done your
one of the
dues.
greatest rock bands that ever drew breath or played on any stage. So, when I think that someone described that to me as one of the defining moments. There's big defining moments. There's like the passing of Bon, there's like the passing of Jimi Hendrix, Janis. They're defining moments in rock and roll. And then there's a whole lot of little, smaller things that happen. Not that Woodstock was a smaller thing, but that was a real defining moment.
Yeah.
Ultimo, or whatever, the Angels stabbed the guy at the Stones concert. The Hyde Park thing when they got up after Brian died. There's a series of things that build up the big picture that is rock and roll.
Yeah.
And someone said to me once, that's probably one of them. I'm quite happy that they actually said that. Getting back to Pain, which is where we started off.
A great record.
Pain, it is a fucking great record.
Yep.
It's a great rock and roll record, which says more, I think. The thing about it is that one of the things that I've learned is that instead of running away from pain, we teach our kids to fear pain and to run away from pain, and that's bullshit. We shouldn't do that, because pain is such an integral part of life that we don't actually end up being the person that we are without it. In fact, it's apart from joy or love or whatever, which is the balancing other half, yin and yang. It's the other an essential component for life itself. But so therefore, why make it sort of like the bad cousin? Why make it sort of like the person or the thing that no one wants to deal with? The thing about pain is that it's such a fucking wonderful part of your life.
Yeah.
And that's, when you say that, people go, how can pain be a wonderful part of it? But it is, because that's how you grow.
True.
So, the album Pain is there's moments on that album, even lyrically.
Yeah.
But the intention was to which has been always the intention with any of our albums, is to make a subliminal statement, if you like.
Yeah.
So if you get it, you get it.
Yeah.
And the thing about Pain is there's nothing. It's not like you shouldn't feel like the shadow in the wardrobe. The kids shouldn't be told, well, pain's a terrible part of life and the whole object of life is to avoid it at every cost.
Yeah.
That's bullshit, because whether you want to or not, it's going to be there.
True that. Something we ask everyone is Beatles or the Stones?
Oh, get fucked. That's awful. You can't do that. You can't do that.
Awesome.
One is just as important as the other.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for that. And
Thanks, mate.
great rock legend, the Tats.
That's for little blokes. That's fucking great.
Cheers.